In this next lesson, we're going to talk about dynamic real-time lighting. So right now, we are in a scene where most of the lighting has been previously baked. And you can see some of the results of that. The three main things that you would notice are light that bounces around. So light would go into areas, maybe even if it isn't directly in there, light might bounce into areas. Sometimes you'll see soft shadows. And also there's a topic called diffuse interreflection, where some of the light will come off, bounce off of an object that has one color, and you'll start to see just a little bit of the orange from this going onto the surface here. And those, when you do baked lighting, that's just all inside the light maps. So now we're going to talk about dynamic objects and dynamic lighting. So this cone is a movable object, and what we're going to do is we want to have this spotlight attached to the cone. Right now the cone is not only is it dynamic, but it's also simulating physics. So when we hit play, you can see it swings back and forth, but I want to make sure that that light goes with it. So I'm going to hit F to frame up. We got the spotlight. Now if we just try to drag and parent it, right now can't do that because the spotlight needs to be set to movable. So once it's set to movable, let's drag and drop it on top of the cone. Now it's parented. And if we hit play, there it goes. It's swinging with the cone. Now, some of the properties with that dynamic light don't have the same kind of quality of light that real light does. Let's take a look at some of those. One of the ones that's a little bit easier to notice would be on these cubes over here. So let me swing over here, and I purposefully set the occlusion down. But on our post-process volume, if we dial in occlusion, the default is usually set at 0.5, and that dials in a type of occlusion called screen space ambient occlusion. So now Unreal has a ton of different tools that allow you to add back in features of real lighting at various costs and with various potential artifacts. So like, for example, screen space ambient occlusion is an algorithm that works based on a two-dimensional capture of what's going on in the screen. So you might not get exactly correct results if it's right on the edge of the screen. Let's look at some of the other advanced features that Unreal can do with real-time lighting. So I'm here in the Unreal documentation area, and I'm in lighting the environment. And look at this list of lighting topics and features. In another video, we'll go over some of the different lighting effects. But for this topic, we're going to stick to some of the real-time lighting effects. So we already talked about SSAO, screen space ambient occlusion. So this is a document that you can take a look at. I'll include the links in the notes section. There's also a thing called capsule shadows. So if you have objects, machinery, or characters that have bones inside of them, you can turn on capsule shadows and get some, look at that, really beautiful indirect shadow that's being cast. There's also a thing called mesh distance fields, which takes three-dimensional look at your scene and allows you to generate some really nice soft shadows as well as ambient occlusion based on a three-dimensional analysis of the scene. And then there's two other areas. We already talked a little bit about skylighting, but I wanted to talk a little bit about HDRIs. So another way to get some advanced feeling of light in your scene is using high dynamic range images. And there's, as of Unreal 4.23, there's an HDRI backdrop plugin that's been added. And before we go to the final step here, which is screen space global illumination, that's really kind of where we're heading, but it's a little bit costly right now. It's in beta for SSGI. But first, let's talk about HDRI. I'm going to mention two places that you can use HDRIs. It's a plugin right now, so if you go in and you type in under build HDRI, you can load up the HDRI backdrop. And then if you type HDRI, then it will show up and you can just drag that into your scene. So I can hold down the Shift key and drag this out. And you can see this is really great for testing out, dropping in objects, and getting an HDRI that would be able to visualize it with advanced lighting properties and a set that would give you a lighting scenario. Let's delete that, go back to where we were. The other place that I know that you can add an HDRI, if you go under your starter content, blueprints, there's this thing called the BP Light Studio. If you drag that in, it's a really nice, gives you some really nice capabilities for, just go in here, look at the details. So we've got the ability to drop in an HDRI cube map, and there's also global brightness settings, and it's a whole blueprint that's dedicated towards giving you a lot of control with some advanced lighting options based off an HDRI environment. Okay, let's delete that. The final thing that I wanted to talk about was how to turn on mesh distance fields and also SSGI, Screen Space Global Illumination. So to do that, we'll have to go into the settings, project settings, and then you'd go under rendering. And then scroll down to lighting, and there's the generate mesh distance fields to turn that on. And also, you can see Screen Space Global Illumination and turn that on. And it's going to ask you to restart. There's also, if you scroll down, there's ray tracing on down here, and that'll ask you if you want to activate that. But I'm just going to turn those two on. Okay, so I've restarted my level, and now that I have mesh distance fields turned on, you could go under show, and you can visualize those mesh distance fields. You get a completely different view of the environment. Now, in an object-by-object basis, you can turn up or turn down the mesh distance fields if you want to use those in order to generate soft shadows. And I'll reference some tutorials if you want to go down that road, and as well as some tutorials for using the global illumination. So we've gone over the basics of how to make lights movable. We've also talked about just a little bit about the ambient occlusion inside of our post-process volume. We're going to go more into the properties that are available for post-process volumes in another chapter. We did SSAO. And we've also mentioned several ways to use HDRIs inside of our level to light it. So there's a lot of options, and I'll put a lot in the notes, and we'll take it from there.